All right, time to catch up with Joey Wagner, talk about the Illinois side of things in this Illini versus Minnesota matchup. Joey Wagner, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, Jeremy. We got some rest after a travel to and from Oregon. I'm not even trying to complain. Our job's to fly around the country and watch football, but it was a
What'd you think
tired
of
Sunday.
the What'd you think of the PNW, the Pacific Northwest there, Joey?
It was all right. I thought the stadium and the open air press box, the mountain views behind it was really, really cool. Hey, look, I mean, behind the curtains, we leave early, we get there, we're exhausted, we have a beer, have a burger, go to bed, wake up, work. So it's not, I mean, we didn't get a chance to probably fully explore the beauty that is the Pacific Northwest, but I had a good time. It's a fun experience. The drive from Portland to Eugene is long.
Yeah, it's a lot of traffic on that two-lane highway. But Portland, they pride themselves in weird, and you get to see some weird in Portland. But I love that part of the country. It is just absolutely gorgeous, and they have really, really good beer. But Illinois loses as we expected at Oregon, 38-9, way less competitive than you'd hope for, though, Joey. And I thought Brett Bielema's message after that game was pretty spot on. It's like you can't let Oregon beat you twice. Well, Illinois comes home where they're 5-0, and they have beat every team that is not ranked in the top 3 of the AP top 25. So Illinois should remain confident that they can win a game like this against Minnesota, but they open as 3-point favorites, and then all of a sudden that line switched real quickly. 6-point swing. They are now 3-point underdogs at home to Minnesota, which has won 3 straight games. Does that shock you, Joey?
Yes and no. I mean, just in the sense that, like, typically at home, ranked versus unranked, the ranked is going to be favored. But I think you look, and the biggest topic we're going to get into, Jeremy, and we'll talk about is look at the injuries. You look who left the Oregon game and the uncertainty around those guys leaving: Pat Bryant, Caleb Patterson, Torrey Cox, Terrence Brooks. And like, I understand why that line would flip the way that it has. And Illinois hasn't played the best football. They didn't play very well, obviously, at Oregon. And there's been some signs over the course of the last few weeks, like, oh, okay, maybe the defense take out Michigan and that ordeal, but you go back to Purdue, you go back to Penn State, and maybe that's coming back a little bit. So surprised in the sense that Illinois is ranked and an underdog at home, but I think if you zoom out a little bit, you could maybe not agree, but understand how they got there.
Yeah, I would think it's speculation about the injuries, and again, we'll talk about that here in a second. But I also think it's you look at some of these metrics and yards per play, EPA, all those different things. Illinois is lower ranked than Minnesota, despite Minnesota having one fewer win. And really, I mean, the USC win was an impressive one for them, but the other teams they've beaten aren't great teams. UCLA is obviously really struggling in its first year in the Big Ten. Maryland is bad this year, despite them beating USC too. But Illinois won a lot of close games. Not a surprise. Maybe had a little bit of luck here. But even the Sagarin ratings, Illinois is 49, Minnesota 36. The FPI, ESPN, it's like 35 for Minnesota, 52 for Illinois. So I think I think they're pretty even. And I thought this would be maybe even a true toss-up, Joey, but I think that the swing to 3 points is probably indicative of some speculation about injuries or maybe some insight into injuries. But let's go into question number 1 of our 6-pack, because you were just with Brett Bielema. How concerned are you about the Illini injuries? Pat Bryant leaves the game, is in concussion protocol. Torrey Cox, Caleb Patterson, Terrence Brooks all leave the game as well from that cornerback position. So what do you think? Thursday, as we record this, what should Illini fans know about the injuries?
Well, I asked Brett Bielema if any of those guys practiced. He said, I kind of got the sense that maybe a handful of those guys have been out there, but he was just going to categorize all of the guys who left into one. And as you mentioned off air, he said, we'll wait for 2 hours until the Big Ten injury report comes out, which I learned from you, Jeremy, is a nod to a pretty popular saying by PJ Fleck, apparently. But the tone was different than it was on Monday. Monday seemed like, oh, hey, don't sweat it. Like, these guys will be back. And Monday, given Pat Bryant's in concussion protocol, Torrey Cox is in a concussion protocol. I don't know how much you can really be sure on Monday as you build into this, but I'm probably more zeroed in on Pat Bryant to see where he is truly. I think maybe a couple of those DBs I would expect to see in some capacity out there. I don't know that to be sure, but Bryant, I don't know. And that's obviously, to me, the headliner for lack of better terms, on this injury report because he's got 7 touchdowns and he's their best wide receiver, or 1A, 1B was Zachary Franklin. So I don't know about that, right? And that changes a lot, in my opinion, for what Illinois wants to do offensively, because not only is Pat Bryant good, he's the guy they trust to throw it down the field to. And that's kind of fallen away a little bit from this Illinois offense in recent weeks. And you add that plus his consistency on some of those intermediate passes, and he makes a lot of things go.
Yeah, I would imagine some of these defensive backs are going to be back. Some of these corners are going to be back. And, if you have to put Xavier Scott out at the corner, you can manage, right? And we'll see who would play nickel, whether that's Tyson Rooks or not. But I would imagine 1 or 2 of Terrence Brooks, Torrey Cox, or Caleb Patterson will be back, just based on what Bielema said earlier in the week. The Bryant one, the concussions, you can be optimistic on Monday and something can change later in the week. So I truly do think we're going to just find out 2 hours beforehand. But that is the one. He is one of your best players. He is a game changer potentially for this one, because if you only have, if Zachary Franklin is got Malik Elzy or Alex Kapka-Jones across from him against a really good Minnesota secondary, against 2 really good Minnesota corners in Justin Wally and the Bucknell transfer, I just think that's going to be tough. That is a little bit tougher of a matchup where what is your strength? It is your passing attack. So that's a huge concern. Is Illinois has been pretty injury free outside of Caden Fagan, this season, and Cole Rusk obviously in the preseason. But this would be one of the worst injuries you can have, because while Malik Elzy's talented, Alex Kapka-Jones is talented, Pat Bryant's an NFL player. And there's not a ton of those on the Illinois roster.
No, that's exactly right. And not only is he an NFL player, again, he's just so important to what they do offensively. And when we talk about the way they're able to throw the ball, a lot of that is kind of, whether we always say it or it's always implied for sure, you have 2 guys on the outside who make it more difficult for those safeties to kind of cheat over on one. So if you take one of those guys out, then what, right? Then who's your proven productive guy who would step into that? As you mentioned, Malik Elsy's talented. Alex Kapka-Jones is the guy who's clearly earned their trust. Hey, that's great, but they're not Pat Bryant.
They got to combine 3 catches for 66 yards this year.
That's right, and all those are Malik Elzy. And Pat Bryant's a guy who's an NFL prospect, who's going to be an all Big Ten wide receiver in some capacity, whether that's one of the teams or honorable mention. He's a senior. He's been around. That's a lot of experience, a lot of talent that you possibly wouldn't have if he's unable to go. So maybe Malik Elzy has a game if Pat Bryant's not out there. Maybe Alex Kapka-Jones has a game or has a moment if Pat Bryant's not out there. But you like your odds better if Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin are able to play off of each other a little bit more. I think we also, Jeremy, need to mention, if Pat Bryant doesn't play, I hate doing this. I hate just having to keep throwing these ifs out there because I'm somebody – I know, but you and I are people who like to know, people who listen like to know, and it sucks not knowing. But I think you have to open the idea to maybe Colin Dixon could be a guy who goes outside, and Hank Beatty would probably be the guy in the slot. So there are options. I'm not trying to make it sound like the end of the world, but you're not as good as a football team without Pat Bryant on the field.
Yeah, and you have to be pretty creative, I think, to get Zachary Franklin open. As you were mentioning, they will know where number 4 is. When 13 and 4 are out there for Illinois, Bryant and Franklin, just a lot harder for a defense to shade to one side or to scheme towards one side. Kind of along those lines, Joey. Number 2, what's your concern level about Luke Altmyer's passing the last 2 games? He's 26 of 53 for 241 yards the last 2 games, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. That's an 86 pass efficiency, obviously under 50% completion rate. His season pass efficiency is now 147.7. And you're going up against a Minnesota defense, Joey, that's number 1 in the Big Ten in pass efficiency and has 15 interceptions on the season. That is number 1 among Power 4 teams. So do you have how high is your concern level about Luke Altmyer's passing?
Well, not only does Minnesota have all that, they got a freshman who's probably going to be right up there. If Jeremiah Smith wasn't in college football right now, he probably shouldn't be. He should be in the NFL. Corey Parrish would probably be pushing that Big Ten freshman of the year, the safety at Minnesota. It's interesting. I do think we should put a little context around that. We weren't concerned about Luke Altmyer after Michigan. It was hey, he played a good game. He made the throws he was supposed to make.
He missed a few. We did say he missed.
That's fine. But for the most part, we left that that's just kind of what the game called for. Good defense, stop everything. So now, like, yeah, we've got to lock those in because it's the last 2 games, and you put all those stats together. But I didn't leave the Michigan game thinking, ooh, yikes.
No.
Like, so I just wanted to say that because when we put those together, I feel like there was a different feeling after that. And Oregon wasn't good. Like that was his worst performance of the season. He missed open receivers. Some of his throws weren't on the money. Looked like his clock just wasn't really always in the way that we had seen it early this season. That is where you kind of go, okay, how much of that is Luke Altmyer overthinking? Is he not seeing the field? Or how much of that is, hey, Oregon's really fast everywhere. That's a good defense. It's the number 1 team in the country on the road. The true answer is in that game, the way he played was probably somewhere in the middle, maybe a little bit more towards Oregon's really, really good. So, I mean, there's a level of concern because of the things that he missed at Oregon that we just haven't seen him miss through the first 7 games of the season going into that. I mean, yeah, there's some because you need it to be so good with the way you're running the ball better, but really, really need to pass the ball and do it well.
Well, there it is, Joey. Like, you've played Michigan, pretty dang good defense with a pretty dang good defensive front. I thought Illinois' offensive line played great that game, but still they got talent, right? But he missed a couple throws that were just like, oh, he made those the first couple of weeks. And then Oregon, number 1 team in the country. I thought he was trying to do too much on that first interception. They're down 14-0. He's trying to make a big play. He didn't see the safety kind of fall back. So you give him a little grace there. The second interception, just slightly underthrown, really good play by the defense. And talking with Luke this week, I love where his mindset is. He hasn't lost any confidence. But the point is, like, he has to play at a high level. Like, that's why this team started 6-1. It's because Luke Altmyer had set such a high bar for what he is, and Illinois needed top-tier quarterback play to win those many games. So if he, even reverts a little bit, that margin for error, you lose against Nebraska, you lose against Purdue, you lose against Kansas, right? Like, all of a sudden, like, if he's just not that top-tier guy, maybe he's just, good quarterback, that's a big change for Illinois. So he's got to be on, especially if Pat Bryant isn't there. So I have some, it's 2 weeks in a row where I felt like, he missed some throws against Michigan, though. I thought he was great on the run, and I just thought he was forcing things a little bit too much against Oregon, and that's the number 1 team in the country for a reason. So I would say lukewarm. I didn't even mean that for a pun, Luke. Lukewarm. I'm not like, Luke Altmyer.
Sure, yeah.
Huge issue. I think he's still going to be huge for them and help them win multiple more games here down the stretch. But it was just something to watch. To see
something different.
Because they need different.
Yeah, we're talking about it because it's just not what it had been for the first 6-7 games of the season. It helps that Illinois is running the ball better now. Like, if you want to try to spin this into something else, like Illinois is able to run the ball a little bit better to maybe take some off of Luke Altmyer's shoulders. But the next question is,
can I just build off that, take something off Luke's shoulders? Because this is why I'm having the conversation, is because I think there is so much weight on him to kind of carry this team. And I think he has for most of the season. He is the reason, for the most part, that they are playing. They are 6-2 at this point. I am still a big believer in Luke Altmyer. I think he's a really good quarterback, but they need him to be that to, continue to win games and capitalize on the start that he's helped them build.
Yeah, that's 100% right. And it's a lot to wear, right? And I get that, and I understand. So maybe getting that running game going, he's involved in that. Absolutely. But this is a perfect segue, Jeremy, into number 3, because you need the offense to be that level, because the Illinois defense hasn't been what it the last couple of weeks. It's left some to be desired. It's probably putting it lightly. Yeah,
number 3. What's your level of faith in this Illini defense right now, Joey? Go for it.
Well, the Oregon game just wasn't any good, right? I mean, they got down early. Aaron Henry talked about some execution issues. He to his credit, he walked us through every thought process he had on that first touchdown pass to Tez Johnson. If you don't agree with it, that's fine. I get it. I appreciated the detail in telling us what he was thinking on that. Still not what I would have done. I think your best, we talk so much to these guys, and a lot of what they say is putting your players in advantageous situations. That's been Barry talks about it. Aaron talks about it. Individual position coach talk about it. I don't know that an advantageous situation for Gabe Akis is playing a zone 7 yards off the line. Like, that's just his best skill is getting after the quarterback. And Aaron,
both Gabe Akis and Seth Coleman.
Correct. Without Dylan Rosiak blitzing. And we've seen that drop back before. And to Aaron's point, and to his credit, that has been a good curveball to mix up the picture.
Yeah.
And it has. It's worked. But usually, as I recall it, and I'm sure someone would tell me if I'm wrong, usually it's like a fourth person coming from somewhere and not simply the three defensive linemen.
Except on the Bears Hail Mary defense, Joey. Only three.
Tough for you guys, huh?
Yeah, a little tough.
Well, hey, it's all right.
Good coaching.
For me,
Hard
it's
to
great stuff. For one franchise. Man, you just got me. But look, and Brett Bielema said on Monday, hey, we've had two bad halves of football effectively. The first half of Oregon and the second half of Purdue. And there's absolutely merit to that. But there have been little kind of concerns here and there that have popped up. So you can't just take that in isolation, Jeremy. And like, yeah, they did. Like, I thought they played well against Michigan. They stopped the run. Granted, that's all they had to stop. What was the Michigan run? But Michigan's run the ball effectively when other teams have known they've only had to stop the run. So hat tip to them in that game. Like they did their matchup and they got out of there with the win. But there's just been stuff where you see it. Now the injuries are in the secondary and you think, I don't know. Like, it's not as good as we thought it was early. It's probably not as bad as we thought it was in the second half against Purdue. But there are red flags here or there on that defense.
Yeah, my level of faith in the defense is not very high because all you got to do is look at the numbers. ESPN ranks this defense 15th in efficiency among Big Ten teams. Illinois, during conference play, they're 15th in total defense, 14th in scoring defense, 16th in rushing defense. Listen, I know you played the number one team in the country. You also played the worst team in the Big Ten and gave up 46 points in the second half.
Worst team in the Power 5. Power 4.
Yeah. There you go. Their third down percentage is 16th in the Big Ten. They don't get off the field. 5 takeaways in 5 Big Ten games. This is a takeaway-heavy defense, Joey, that only has 5 takeaways in 5 Big Ten games, and they only have 3, and 3 of those were in one game against Jack Tuttle, who retired 2 weeks later. Like, I got concerns. Yeah, I got concerns because I just don't know, one, how much talent there is. And, you know, we can pick apart coordinators, plays, and all that stuff. But I do think this is a game, like, you got to be aggressive. And I don't want to – I get why you sit back in zone coverage against Oregon. I do not like sending 2 outside linebackers back. But, of course, Illinois missed tackles. Like, that's not on Aaron Henry, but they missed tackles. Like, that's a problem with athleticism. That's a problem with talent as well. So with all of that, I have some concerns because Purdue should not have happened. That second half was embarrassing, I think, for that unit and the coaching staff. Michigan, nice bounce back. Kind of got to asterisk it, but hey, they succeeded against a bad offense and a bad quarterback. And then this past week against Oregon, they just never had a chance and were outplayed. But this is why I just think this is a big game. I think this is a proving game for this defense because Minnesota is not that explosive, Joey, but they are efficient. Like, they are an offense that with Max Brosmer there, moves the ball down the field. They pass kind of to set up the run. Daniel Jackson and Darius Taylor are all Big Ten caliber talents. They have some good offensive linemen. It's not an offense that's going to blow you away, I don't think. Like, Maryland was awful against them. I think Illinois should hold them under 30 or, you know, even under 4 touchdowns. But if they don't, then I'm really concerned about this defense because they've kind of been this bend but don't break. I want to see them be the aggressor in this one because I do think this is an offense that, with its lack of explosiveness, you can play man and you can blitz and you can put pressure on Brosmer and force them into 3rd and longs. And then I think they're in a little bit of trouble. But it's an offense playing well right now with a quarterback that's way better than what they had last year.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I talked about this in Oregon, probably on the flight or on the way back. What is this defense when the takeaways aren't coming in 2s and in 3s a game? And they got one at Nebraska, got out of there with the win. You could also point to Dylan Raiola missing an easy touchdown in the end zone. But point being, Illinois got out of there with the win. You didn't get any against Penn State. You were right there. But 1 or 2 of those probably puts you in a different conversation or a chance to be in a different conversation. You didn't get any against Purdue, and it went terribly in the second half. So, like, that's my big question is, what is this defense if you're not just forcing an incredible rash of takeaways? And I asked Aaron Henry that on Monday, and his answer to start was a lot of what I thought, Jeremy, and it was keep the ball in front of us, limit big plays. But then what I kind of was, I don't know, taken aback's not right, but then he said, and I pulled up the quote.
And pointed it back towards takeaways, right? Like,
yeah, that's right. And he said, so at the end of keeping the ball in front of us, not being thrown over our head, Henry said. So at the end of the day, the goal in my realm of things is the ball, and the most important thing on the football field. So obviously you try to preach takeaways every game. I get that. I understand
But my thing is
what
this
if you don't get them? What if a team doesn't put the ball in harm's way? What if someone Tommy DeVito 2022 things, right? Like what?
And that's kind of what Max Brosmer is. He'll nickel and dime you down the field. And they are very efficient at it, and they don't turn the ball over. They're number one in the Big Ten in turnover margin, and part of that is they got takeaway heavy defense, but they also just don't turn the ball over very often. So this is why I think it's a game where you got to be aggressive. You got to blitz. You got to put some pressure on it and put your guys in some one-on-one battles. I know maybe you don't have faith in your talent, but this would be more of a man-heavy blitz pressure game where I would want to be the aggressor if I'm Illinois. But we'll see. We'll see what they do.
Yeah, I like that. I do. I don't disagree with that idea, but I wonder if that secondary is limited. If Tyson Rooks is making his first career start at nickel, if Xavier Scott's outside, he maybe should never leave Daniel Jackson anyway.
Yeah.
But like, what if you're limited back there? Then how does that change what Illinois is able to do? We won't know that until 9 a.m. on Saturday when that injury report comes out. But that would be my counter to that is, do you feel comfortable going man and blitzing if you're as limited as you were to end the Oregon game in the secondary? I don't know that they will be. In fact, I would say maybe one or two of those guys I would think could come back. But what if you're a little more limited on game day than you thought?
Number 4, what matchup most intrigues you on Saturday, Joey?
There's pretty much 2, right? And one I just mentioned, what was Xavier Scott and Jackson. The other is Gabe Akis, man, and his. I'm gonna do this so I don't butcher.
Ariante Ursary.
Thank you. The projected first round pick. I was getting there, Jeremy. I had to pull it up. Minnesota has the pronunciation on the website. Wonderful stuff. That's to me the one, because as we go into this defense and when we talk about this defense, Gabe Akis can be a changer, man. He can just change things for you defensively. Saw The Athletic had him as one of the most prominent stock risers at his position to this point in the season. He's got 6.5 sacks this year, and Ursary is a projected first-round pick. And first-round pick tackles are difficult matchups. They are, and Gabe Akis has a really big opportunity to kind of to definitely put himself in that draftable category as an early entrant if he has a good game here. And he was really, credit to Gabe, I asked him about that kind of at length, and he was really, really open about that. And he said it's good to go against guys like that because those are the guys, scouts or whoever, are going to be watching that type of tape. Those are the guys you're going to be playing in the league. All right. Yeah. I was glad he said it because it's true, and it's a big opportunity for him in that matchup. And it won't just be him, right? Seth Coleman will be in that conversation as well. But that, to me, is a huge one because those guys can change things and get Minnesota kind of uncomfortable.
You mentioned the player ones that I'm really interested in. I'm also, Miles Scott's a guy that I'm interested to see if he can rope quarterback Max Brosmer into a pick because we haven't seen one from Miles Scott here in a little bit. Mine's the coaching staff. It's Aaron Henry versus OC Greg Harbaugh. Spelled Harbaugh, but pronounced Harbaugh. This is really interesting because their offense kind of does what Illinois wants you to do, in that they do these long drives or kind of nickel and diming you down the field. Not a huge, good intermediate passing game, but not a lot down the field. A lot of short passes where I think if Illinois is in man, those guys can come up, read that, make the tackle, or if they're in zone, they can, do those kind of things. But like, they're really accurate. And Daniel Jackson gets open. And Elijah Spencer's a pretty good wide receiver. Darius Taylor, get him in space. The Minnesota running back can make some plays. And you talked about Akis kind of against Ursary. I'd like to see some stunt action. Get Akis on the interior and get him against some of those guards who are a little bit, less, I guess, impactful as pass blockers. So I just think I'd like to see a good defensive game plan because this Minnesota offense doesn't terrify me that they're going to put up 42 points. I know they just put up a bunch against Maryland, but Maryland's really, really bad. I think Illinois should be better than that. But it's also an offense that I think can control the clock and kind of with the passing game. And it's kind of different than what you've seen. So I want to see a bounce back performance from this defense. And I think it starts with the defensive coordinator, Joey.
Yeah, I think you're right. And the way he goes about his game plan, Gabe Akis, Seth Coleman on us with the stunts as we've talked about. Where does Miles Scott line up? I think it's probably as fair a question this week as it has been at any point with the injuries. And
Xavier Scott, you're talking about.
Xavier Scott, yes. Sorry, thank you. That is Miles Scott. I know where he's lining up, like 20 yards off the ball and patrolling everything. Xavier Scott, in the sense of, you try to match up him on Jackson, or do you stick with what you've got? And probably depends on health, Jeremy. But yeah, I'm with you. I think anything offensively that we should that Bears mentioned, and some of that's just kind of up in the air as we wait for Pat Bryant's help. But Corey Parrish is really good, and he makes people make mistakes, and that's going to be how, if at all, Illinois can negate his impact on the game is really fascinating in terms of moving the ball downfield against a defense that you could probably run on a little bit better than you can pass on right now. And I don't know if that's always been the case for a Minnesota defense, but that's certainly where it is right now.
Yeah, the other guys I would mention, Joyner's good pass rusher. Had 2 sacks and a forced fumble against Illinois last year. Kind of turned that game at one point when Illinois was leading and helped Minnesota get the lead there. He's really good. So him against J.C. Davis and Melvin Priestley will be interesting. You mentioned Jackson against Xavier Scott, but I would say Justin Wally against Sakari Franklin. Without knowing whether Bryant will play, like Wally's a really good cover guy, not a great tackler, but a pretty good cover guy. So I'm interested to see that matchup as well. All right, let's move on to number 5. Joey, what gives you the most optimism for Illinois against Minnesota? Because they are 6-2 and ranked coming into this game.
Yeah, and let's be honest, I kind of have lost sight of that, given the way for the most part, the last 3 games have gone for Illinois, 2.5 games with that Purdue second half. Well, we can't overlook, and it's a big thing I'll be writing about for Friday, they've been running the ball better. They have, and when Caden Fagan got hurt, you're kind of looking around and thinking, is this going to be a repeat of a year ago, or you just didn't feel like they could ever get traction on the ground? And since he's been out, Josh McCray has stepped up. Josh McCray's had big moments. Aiden Lawfrey had moments. He's looking healthy, looking faster, especially against Oregon for sure, and probably midway through the first, early second quarter, because the first quarter I thought they should get Josh McCray back. So I looked at you and I said, okay, more McCray, please. And Aiden Lawfrey really made me mince those words because he did have some good runs. You factor in Luke Altmyer and his ability to get out there and to run.
Minnesota's given up big yards on the ground to Iowa, USC. So some good teams, when they've played good teams, they've given up some yards on the ground. Yeah,
and again, as we talked about earlier, running the ball effectively could, in theory, take some of that weight off of the shoulders of Luke Altmyer. And Josh McCray is really big in that, man. I just thought he ran. The yardage wasn't really there against Oregon, but I thought he ran really powerfully and did the Caden Fagan fall forward thing that we just hadn't seen a lot of Josh McCray for the last 2 years, and really until at times this season. So that gives me optimism. If you compare that with a bounce back Luke Altmyer game, you feel okay, I would think, about bailing out a defense if that defense struggles.
I'll say Barry Lunny Jr. I just think like the game plans have worked. I know Oregon did not go well, but that sack with the face mask, and then Luke Altmyer throws an interception like he shouldn't, especially on first down, which Luke admitted. Like, I just think you have a really good offensive coordinator. I think you got the weapons and the quarterback and an improved running game, and I think an improved offensive line in that running game if you can just get consistent protection. And I think this is a Minnesota team you can protect him against, but they like to run some exotic things. They like to stack some guys on the line of scrimmage. So the communication, which I know you've written about, Joey, has to be much better on the offensive line. But the other part is you're 5-0 at home. Your 2 losses are the top 3 teams in the country. And Bielema has never lost to Minnesota nor PJ Fleck. So an Oregon loss does not define you. A Penn State loss does not define a program like Illinois. It would for Ohio State, right? It's not the same for Illinois. So these 6 really winnable games that we saw on the schedule, they have found a way to win. That becomes harder against better teams. I think Minnesota's more on par with like a Nebraska than, the teams you've lost to, but I think they're better than Purdue by far. So you have to play well to win, but Bielema has a pretty good history of this. And I think he's a good coach. I think he's, the offense coordinator is coaching really well. Another thing is special teams. Your special teams is really good. Minnesota's has been bad. So if we get into these games of margins, having David Alano, who's been consistent, Hugh Robertson's been a really good punter this year, having a return game, and Hank Beatty, that's been pretty good, and a coverage unit that's been pretty good. I've seen numbers where Illinois is top 10 defensively, right, or top 10 in special teams efficiency this year. I think number 2 with Kelly Ford. I think number 2 or something like that with ESPN. So that could matter in these toss-up games like this.
Yeah, we said it before. We talked about it a lot before the Penn State game. teams would try to trade for one of Illinois' kickers right now. If college football trades Illinois, at that point, I thought they'd maybe try to go get a tight end, but I'm thinking you might explore the linebacker market if you could do that. But special teams has been good. Robbie Disher came in with a really polished resume as a special teams coordinator last season. Obviously was not good, and it was not good in really key moments that ultimately went a long way in keeping Illinois out of a bowl game. But I sometimes it gets overlooked. Special teams, it's just a fact of life. But Illinois has been good to this point this year. And guys like, I'm curious if you've got to go to more depth in the secondary, like Jaheim Clark has played a lot of special team snaps. He's been the guy they've been all over, really pumping up here for the last part of the season, really going back to training camp. And I just want to shout him out. He's been a really good special teamer. Really freshman. Yeah, those two have been good special teamers and goes a long way in propping up those rankings.
And I also think your best version of Luke Altmyer wins you this game. So I just think he's when he's at his best, Brosmer's been really good, really efficient. I think Luke Altmyer as a playmaker is another level. So if you get a good Luke Altmyer game, I think you're winning. Number 6. How many wins will Illinois get during its last 4 games, Joey?
You changed this on me. Initially, you had –
I thought the over-under was too easy. I thought that was a cop-out for us, so I'm going to make us go on the record. How many wins in our last 4 games?
3. I have them winning 3 games. I think one of these next 2, you can get tripped up. I don't think you're getting tripped up at Rutgers. I don't think you're getting tripped up against Northwestern. Again, I guess now if people have read the preview picks, I've kind of backed myself into the post-bye week Michigan State game. I just – rolling off 4 in a row in the Big Ten is, unless you're Ohio State, unless you're Oregon, unless you're Penn State, it's a lot that can go wrong. And as you start getting into the injury part of the season, we've seen it's a huge question mark going in to this week. So I think one of these next 2, Jeremy, they'll trip up, but you should be favored in your final 2, and we'll see what it looks like against Michigan State. Post-bye week, though, so that, we'll see. That's a big factor in that Michigan State game.
Yeah, I mean, if you saw the preview picks, I picked Illinois to lose a close one here. I just do think they're going to lose one of these next 2 games because I think both these teams, Michigan State's got talent. I don't trust them as much as I trust Minnesota. Like Minnesota might not be as talented as Michigan State, but I just kind of think they're a really solid club that's, complementary football right now, solid offense and really good defense right now. Quarterbacks playing at a high level. And you're just kind of vulnerable, like the defense, the injuries, Luke not playing his best the last 2 weeks. Like those things just give me a little bit of pause. But Illinois certainly can win this game. But I think if you win one of the next 2, I love where you sit because Rutgers, the last 3 games, Joey, has given up 42 points, 30 points, 42 points. And Wisconsin's a tough team. USC has good offense, but USC lost to Maryland, right? UCLA scored 35 points against you. That's not a good offense. So while that game early in the year when they were 4-0 looked a little, hey, they beat Virginia Tech at Virginia Tech. They beat Washington in a game I can't believe Washington lost. It was like, oh, this is a physical team. Well, they have quarterback problems, and now they have defensive problems. I just think Illinois is going to win that one. And then Northwestern's not very good. Like they're just not a good team. And I think at Wrigley with a lot of orange there, I think that's a great matchup for Illinois. So I think it's 3. Even if they win the next 2 and maybe slip up at one of the last ones, I think it's 3. What would be your next pick? Would it be 2 or 4?
4, because as I'm sitting here talking to you, I realize I backed myself into a corner for thinking they're going to lose to Michigan State and out of a bye week. I don't know that I fully believe that. And now I'm second guessing.
They didn't play great I guess they did in the first half out of the bye week, 27-3.
Yeah, I'm second guessing if I should have just said 4 to begin with. I was told the over-under was going to be 2.5, and I was ill prepared. I didn't prepare anyway. I was ill prepared coming into this. 4 would probably be my next one. And the more I think about it, like if they convincingly beat Minnesota, it's 4. By convincing, and I don't think that's going to happen, but by convincingly, I'm talking 13 points, 14 points. If that happens, then I think, oh yeah, this team's going to close out with 4 straight wins because this is the best team Illinois has left on the schedule. I agree with that. I think it's going to be a 7-point game. I think Illinois is going to win it, but I don't feel the most comfortable in picking that, especially as we await that 9 a.m. injury report with our biscuits and gravy.
Yeah, but you're right. Like if they beat Minnesota, I'd be much more likely to pick 3 wins in a row than just one of the next 3. So I'm with you. 4 would probably be my next pick. So it's a good place to be. It's just kind of a sign that I still think this team's going to finish well, because that is a huge topic. It's what I wrote about after Oregon, Joey, is can this team finish strong? Because they started to last year and then they dropped those last 2 games by 4 points. Obviously in 2022, you start 7-1, Big Ten championship is right there for you, and you lose 3 of your last 4 regular season games and you miss a great opportunity. I still feel like this team, even if it drops one, has a great chance to end its season well, because I like Luke Altmyer in this offense. And if they're healthy, I think they'll do well. And I think the defense has some favorable matchups coming up to where they can play better than they have recently.
Yeah, and this is the depth part of the season. And depth for the longest time in Bielema's, not the longest time, for each year of Bielema's tenure, that's been kind of the big conversation we've circled is, hey, I like their starters. I like Luke Altmyer. I like Zachary Franklin, Pat Bryant, Tanner Arkin, the offensive line. But what if there's injuries? But what if those happen? And it's fact of life in November that you get hurt, and that's where you've got to lean into your depth. I think Illinois is getting better, but I don't know that they can withstand a lot either. And obviously you can't withstand Luke Altmyer. The Donovan Leary, I know they're really high on him. Luke Altmyer is winning you football games. You couldn't withstand that if that happened. I don't know that you can really withstand Pat Bryant against this Minnesota team. You could maybe withstand him against Rutgers and Northwestern. But right now, that's a tough one. So if they can get to and through Minnesota healthy relatively, if you get a couple of those guys back, then I feel good. But there's some key injuries that could happen that you just wonder, that could be a real challenge for them.
That could make it a concern going into Rutgers or Northwestern on the road, right? Like those can turn into that because Big Ten between 5 and 17, there's not much of a difference. All right, time for picks to click. Last week, I think I hit on Zachary Franklin. You had Pat Bryant in that one. Xavier Scott I picked on defense, and Matthew Bailey. Xavier Scott was maybe a foot away from a pick 6 that would have changed that game, but didn't time it up exactly right. I don't think anybody on defense gets that one unless one of us would have picked Tyson Rooks or Gabe Backus, maybe.
Yeah, that's not happening on defense. Do you want to start this one?
Yeah, I should have done it last week. I mentioned him. I'm probably a week late. I should probably pick the other running back, but I'm going to go with Aiden.
Yes, good.
I just think explosive plays are needed. I think they're going to be concerned about containing Luke Altmyer, and I think it's going to open things up for Lawfrey. I think, with their aggression, there might be some chances for some draws in this one as well. And I think he can get involved in the pass game, Joey, if Pat Bryant isn't able to play in this one. So I can see Aiden Lawfrey having one of his best games. Minnesota, not great defending the run, and Illinois has been better. I think this is a game where you do lean into that, especially if Bryant can't go. So I considered some other guys. I considered Josh McCray, but I'm going to go with Aiden Lawfrey.
I'm considering Colin Dixon because I wonder about
who's next on my list.
Yeah, I'm really considering him. But I'm just going to go head-to-head with you, Jeremy. Josh McCray. I really like what you've seen. The yardage doesn't, like if you just look at the stat sheet, it doesn't knock you over. But if you watch it, he's been running hard. When Josh McCray runs hard over the course of time, good things happen for Josh McCray. And it feels like he's looking more and more like his freshman year, and it feels like there's that game somewhere brewing for him. I don't know if it's against Minnesota, but I'm just going to guess it's his. And he has been sneaky. This is what reminds me most of his freshman year. Out of the backfield, he's been a weapon for Illinois when they've gone that route. You think back to that big Penn State catch. He's had that one-handed catch at Nebraska. He's had moments where you just kind of a reminder not to forget about him as a pass catcher. So I think he's starting to put it together. This feels like if you're limited at wide receiver, this team doesn't stop the run as well as they stop the pass. Feels like it's got to be one of those two guys, man.
And now Khalil Valentine goes off for like 80 yards and a touchdown. We're both wrong. All right, I'll let you pick defense first since I went offense first.
Oh, God. Yeah. Who's healthy? I mean, at this point, you look at the secondary, I'm going to stick with Gabe Backus. I know that is a hell of a difficult matchup for him. And one that, maybe they get, if he's not doing well, maybe you try Seth Coleman's hand over there and you move Gabe Backus to the other side. But when he's not dropping into coverage, and I hope we don't see a great deal of that against Minnesota, he's been getting after the quarterback at a really, really high rate. I think I wrote he must be third, I think, in the Big Ten in pressures among edge rushers. It's coming together for him in really short order. And that Michigan game was huge, but it wasn't really an outlier. It was an outlier in terms of just the volume of production doesn't happen that often. But he's been really disruptive all season. He's coming into his own. I think he's going to relish the opportunity to put his foot forward against a future first-round pick who's really stinking good. And this take may age like crap because that guy's so good.
Future Chicago Bear, Ariante Ursary.
Yeah, that's my concern. Like we're going to listen to this and be like, oh, that was stupid. Why did you do that? But so they're fun. They're fun picks to click. I'm gonna think Gabe Akers. Here's the thing. With this defense, you need it to be one of Akers or Coleman. You just do right now.
Well, and that goes right into me, Joey. We're together. I'm going Seth Coleman. It's time. It is time for a Seth Coleman game. He needs to make a big impact, and he was 0 for no pressures against Oregon. Listen, I know how quickly they get rid of the ball. He dropped into coverage a little bit more than normal. Didn't have many opportunities to get after the quarterback. But he's had moments this year where he has been one of the most impactful defenders on the Illini, and he's had a lot of pressures. He needs to start turning those into sacks and getting home, or just having the pressure that leads to a big turnover. Illinois needs that in this game. So I'm with you with Gabe. Seth does line over on the left side, which would be a little bit more than the right side. So that would be the left side of the defense. So the right tackle, Quinn Carroll, who's really good too, not quite as good as Ursary. So I think it might open some things up. But I also think I want to see some more 5-man pressures that allow these guys to get more one-on-ones and have the opportunity to take advantage of those against a team that's not as explosive. So I think a little bit that is on the play calling as well. But both going running backs, both going edge rushers, Joey. We're on the same page.
We did not plan that, so I feel less stupid for being on the same page as you. And it's a big opportunity for those guys, Jeremy. And it's not quite as drastic. I was thinking about this. Last year, you go into last year, and there's so much inexperience in the secondary. And we knew, all right, for this defense to be good, Johnny Newton's got to change games. Seth Coleman, Gabe Akers have to change games. Keith Randolph has to change games. They really had to lead the way. I don't even think change games. Like, they had to be really stinking good for this defense. The secondary has more experience. I like the talent back there. But your game changers are your 2 edge rushers and Miles and your 2 Scotts. Those are the game changers on this defense, and I think this sets up for those edge rushers to have a moment.
Yeah, and it feels like Xavier Scott's a little bit more impactful when it's in man coverage too. So I think I'd like to see that a little bit more as well, especially if he's got to go up against Daniel Jackson a lot as a corner. All right, last thing, bold prediction. What you got, Joey?
We missed terribly a week ago.
They made another reverse with Pat Bryant, though. I didn't think it'd be at the goal line, but I felt like it was. I felt so close, Joey. I felt it's probably going to happen this week now. They probably Werner and Wagner talked about it. Now we can't throw it at Oregon.
Just throw that. I like to think of Barry like playing paper trash can basketball. Like, oh, son of a gun, they got me.
Some analyst walks in there. You can't believe what Werner and Wagner.
Yeah. It's all the stupid stuff I've said for an hour. Hank Beatty touchdown.
Who?
All touchdowns available. I don't think it's going to be on punt, but all touchdowns available for Hank Beatty. I think that would be his first career, Jeremy, if I'm not.
I was just looking that up.
Not mistaken with him.
I don't think he's had one. Elsie's had 2, despite having
2 snaps
10 catches in his career. Yeah.
I don't think
Beatty has not had a touchdown. I like it.
This is it. This is the moment because I should elaborate a little bit on that. If Pat Bryant, here's my feeling on Pat Bryant because he was in protocol. I don't think it's a snap count. There's no pitch count for Pat Bryant. It's you can play or you cannot play. If he cannot play, then Hank Beatty, I think, is your starting slot. You move Colin Dixon outside. Now, obviously, there's a volume of opportunity there. But even if he can play, you've seen a lot more Hank Beatty in recent weeks. You've seen it start to ratchet up for him in terms of his production. I'm of the personal belief next time we talk to him, I'll be curious to ask. I think finding it on punt return and just being able to change the field has really boosted his confidence out there. And, it was just catch the ball for God's sake. And that was even a whirlwind. for him from time to time. Now he's actually making some yards after the catch. I just think that has a way of proving you belong out there. Maybe it's not even as bold as I think, but first career touchdown will call bold.
No, I like it. That's really bold. All right. This might have something to do with Pat Bryant, but there's also something that was in my head with Brett Bielema when you were asking about protection. He's like, maybe we need to change the pocket. And I think that has to do with rolling Luke Altmyer out because that's where he's dangerous, man. I think he can make quick reads. I think that's where he's best. Make quick read, get rid of the ball. So I'm going to go a combined 6+ catches for tight ends / running backs.
Ooh, yeah.
In this game. I feel better about that with Aiden and Josh doing what they're doing, but an extension of the run game, but also getting Tanner Arkin and Carson Goda involved a little bit, just as an extension of that run game, get them ahead of the chains. They've been really good at that, and I think they can lean into that a little bit more, especially if Brian isn't in this game. So I think the tight ends and running backs are going to be more of the passing game, so I'll go 6+ catches combined between those two. My other one was Illinois gives up 400+ yards of offense, but I don't know how bold that is.
Oh, man, that's
kind of their average in conference.
Yeah. I'm going to put you on the spot since you didn't give me the 2.5 over-under heads up. It would not have changed anything. Who leads in that group and with how many?
Oh, I'd like it to be Lawfrey. Because you got to get him in space. Like all of a sudden now in space, he's making plays. It wouldn't surprise me if it were McCray just because he's playing a lot of reps and pass blocking. I won't throw a tight end. I think it would be one of the running backs.
I thought you say Arkin.
No, I'll go one of the running backs. I will go with Lawfrey.
Arkin feels like a one catch for 12 yards and a touchdown or something, doesn't he? Like that's
kind of
been his
touchdown.
Yeah, that's been his. Yeah, well, I just want to reiterate before we wrap up with this. We have to talk about if these guys can't play. I don't know. The more we talk, I was like, I hope someone listening to this is like they're trying to say it without saying it. I don't know. But it's our job to say, okay, if not, like we know if they play, we know what they bring to the table. It's our job to say, if not them, what could things look like? So I just wanted to reiterate, like we got better things to do than try to maneuver hints, right? And the way we say
it. Be like, I think he's going to play, right? Like right. I think they're trending toward that. We had no idea. They keep that under wraps. Bielema was pretty good at that.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that clear. I didn't want anyone to listen and think, oh, these guys, they know, they're not saying it. I don't know, man. I truly, I don't know, but if he can't play, and we say he is Pat Bryant, I think it's a big opportunity for Colin Dixon, Malik Kelsey, Hank Beatty, Alex Captain Jones.
All right, who you got? Penn State, Ohio State.
Why would I pick against Ohio State right now?
Yeah, they just got offense, right? Like I get the environment. I get they lost at Oregon. Just they got the offense that I trust. I don't know if I trust Drew Aller and the injury question with him. If you got Prabula out there, I just got to side with Ohio State's talent, and those passing game weapons, man, are insane. The running backs are insane. So
they're good. They're good. But that's a huge opportunity for James Franklin to take that step over that hurdle and get a win. Why is that? I was just looking to see. Why is that 11 a.m.?
Big noon kickoff, Fox. They pay a lot of money for it, Joe. But yeah, we don't.
Conversely, we will be working, and I think we should take in consideration what we prefer.
Wisconsin, Iowa in the nightcap we get to watch, though. That's actually a really interesting game.
Very interesting. Wisconsin, there's so many questions about everything Wisconsin a month ago. They're figuring it out. Wisconsin is figuring it out a lot of it here. That'll be a fun one. That is not the same old Big Ten West game. I feel like there's going to be more offense than we've ever seen.
Yeah, the over is 41. It feels like it should be higher than that, but it is so weird that Illinois is not playing either of those teams this year.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I mean, I'm sure Illinois does because they're two winning teams, but just really strange to not see those guys on the schedule. All right, that's all I got. Joe, you got anything last minute? Big recruiting weekend. You can check all that out. Illini Inquirer, some official visitors, some flip candidates, a big 2026 visitor. I wrote about that this morning. You can check that out. As Illinois tries to, really end this class well, Joe, and I think they're going to get some good ones here at the end.
Yeah, also happy November. Women's basketball exhibition Friday. Men's basketball begins the season Monday. Women's basketball hosts 19. Florida State Thursday. Men's basketball, SIUE Friday. It is
no sleep, remember.
I am so foolish. Every year, try to do something, try to be a good partner, do something for the bye week, right? And I said, all right.
My wife's birthday is in November. It's the
That's
worst.
tough. That's tough. Send her a greeting card from.
Good thing we got an off week next week.
You try to do something, right? You're like, oh, we'll get away. And then I always forget that the beginning of November, it's like, well, it's an off week from football. Luckily, there's all of us, and Derek Piper's good, and SIUE does not require 3 people. Go Cougars does not require 3 of us to cover that game. But a big weekend, I just want to say real quick, big weekend for Illinois women's basketball that weekend with hosting Florida State, 19th ranked team, first time they've opened against a Power 5 since 2008, ranked team since 2011, ranked team since 98. Then 2 days later, Marquette on Sunday. So a lot of attention, a lot of expectation for this team, and you come out with 2 Power 5 games to really establish yourself, and you win those, you're going to find your way in the rankings when that second batch comes out. But big opportunity for Shauna Green and her team.
Yeah, Joey does a great job covering women's basketball. You can check all that stuff out. He's got a great story on Bryn Shoup-Hill, who goes into a bigger role with Letty Vasconcelos out for the year, the 6'7" transfer from Baylor, former top recruit. She's out, so Illinois not as much size, but Bryn Shoup-Hill, a senior who's produced, but trying to bounce back. Joey's got a good story in her, and he's got more in a notebook coming out as well. But appreciate you listening to all of the Illini Inquirer podcast. Give us a follow, rating, review wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube as well. Hit that like button, subscribe to us, and hit the notifications bell. Everybody have a great weekend. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.